Welcome back. Let's take this time to talk a little bit more about the unit circle. Specifically, this time, instead of talking about the cosine of an angle x, let's talk about the sine of an angle x. So again, you can see that we're starting with the unit circle, and we can draw our important angles on the unit circle again. We could start with the angle 0. It's the angle 0. We have the angle pi over 6, the angle pi over 4, the angle pi over 3, and the angle pi over 2. Now, we already talked a little bit about the fact that the x-axis and cosine are kind of buddies. That means that the y-axis and sine are kind of buddies. So that's the way that I like to remember it, is that cosine goes with the x-axis, sine goes with the y-axis. And if sine goes with the y-axis, then sine of the positive y-axis is going to be 1. Okay, so sine of pi over 2 is 1. And I'm going to circle that again to remind us that that's the sine value of pi over 2. So if I were to write it over here, I might write that sine of pi over 2 is 1. And that's the one that we should always remember, because sine and the y-axis are buddies, cosine and the x-axis are buddies. So cosine of 0 is 1, sine of pi over 2 is 1. Okay, if you can remember those two, then everything else is free. Because as soon as I say, where is the 1, remember that 1 could also be written as the square root of 4 over 2. It's a funny way of writing it, but it helps me to get every other value. Because if this is square root of 4 over 2, then the next major angle, which is pi over 3, is square root 3 over 2. So the sine of pi over 3 is square root 3 over 2. What about pi over 4? Well, that's square root of 2 over 2. Pi over 6 is square root of 1 over 2, which is just 1/2. And then sine of 0 is square root of 0 over 2, or just 0. So the pattern is square root 4 over 2, square root 3 over 2, square root 2 over 2, square root 1 over 2, square root 0 over 2. And now sine becomes negative down here. So it's going down, 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 and it just keeps going down. So if we put in these angles, we wouldn't really even have to know what these angles are, but we could easily put in, what is this? By the way, this is 11 pi over 6. And we can see right now that sine of 11 pi over 6 must be, well, this is 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, negative 1. So negative 1 over 2, or negative 1/2. This is what? 7 pi over 4. And so this is negative root 2 over 2 for the sine value. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pi over 3. And the sine value must be, this is negative 1, negative 2, negative root 3 over 2 is the sine value here. And then finally we go 1, 2, 3, so negative square root 4 over 2, or if you prefer, this is 3 pi over 2 as an angle, and its sine value is negative 1. Now, we just keep the pattern going. Let's fill in the rest of our angles here. What would this be? This is 2 pi over 3, 3 pi over 4, 5 pi over 6, and pi. And then we've got 7 pi over 6, 5 pi over 4, 4 pi over 3. And then we can put in the sine values. Because notice we're counting up here. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 3. So this is square root 3 over 2. 2, square root 2 over 2. 1, 1 over 2. And 0, so it's just 0. Now what are the signs of these last ones? We're going 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, negative 1, so negative 1/2, negative root 2 over 2, negative root 3 over 2, and finally negative root 4 over 2, which is negative 1. So here are all of the sine values on the unit circle. So again, as you're going through and learning your unit circle, the first thing you have to learn are where are the positions of the angles. If you don't know where the positions of the angles are, then you're in big trouble if you get a problem like, say, what's sine of 7 pi over 6? Well, to know what the sine of 7 pi over 6 is, the first thing I do is I think, well, what's the position of 7 pi over 6? Well, it's right here. And now that I know the position, I think, oh, this is sine. Sine is square root 4 over 2 here. It's 3, 2, 1, 0, minus 1. And so this is minus 1/2. In the next video, we'll talk a little bit about tangent.